Dallas put everything on the table: money, talent, and the promise of immediate wins. But when Sandy Brondello turned them down, it wasn't just a personal decision. It became a league-wide statement. Despite the headline-grabbing offer, Brondello chose the Toronto tempo, drawn by their developmental blueprint and collaborative ethos.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
She walked away from coaching one of the league's brightest stars, Paige Bueckers, not out of disrespect, but because the foundation didn't feel right. That rejection led to fallout across the WNBA, prompting firings, soul-searching, and questions about what teams are actually offering beyond salaries and rosters. The ripple effect has been impossible to ignore. Brondello's rejection highlighted the growing divide between what franchises think coaches want and what they truly value. Her preference for structure, vision, and long-term collaboration forced organizations to rethink their recruitment tactics. In a league where talent alone no longer seals the deal, her move reinforced the importance of cultural alignment and strategic intent. This wasn't just a coaching shuffle. It was a signal that the WNBA's power dynamics are changing, and teams must evolve or be left behind. Let's set the record straight. Paige Bueckers didn't resign from the Dallas Wings. But what had happened may as well have felt like a resignation from the dream that Dallas was selling. Because when Sandy Brondello, one of the most respected and decorated coaches in the WNBA, flat out rejected a record-setting offer from the Wings, after they had laid out a whole blueprint for a franchise centered around Bueckers, that dream collapsed. Dallas made a hard pitch. They went all in. Big money, star power, a clear path to a championship. On paper, it should have been a coach's fantasy. But Brondello turned it down. Not for a better check, not for a more famous roster, but for Toronto, a newer franchise with fewer expectations, a smaller spotlight, and a longer-term build. And she didn't hesitate. That decision didn't just change one team's trajectory. It changed the league's conversation about what coaches actually want, and more importantly, what they're no longer willing to tolerate. This was about control, vision, culture. Brondello's decision ripped the curtain back on what many around the league already suspected. Money and talent aren't enough anymore. Not for top-tier coaches. Not for leaders trying to shape legacies. She wasn't lured by a star-studded roster or a fat contract. She wanted to work with a team that got it. One that valued collaboration over hierarchy. One that wasn't just hiring her to steer a ship that was already sailing off course. That ship, in this case, was the Dallas Wings, cruising toward what they assumed would be a sure thing. They had Paige Bueckers. That alone should have made them a coaching magnet. But what Brondello's rejection confirmed is that star players, no matter how talented or marketable, can't compensate for a weak internal structure. Coaches want more than a highlight reel. They want a seat at the table. And when that seat isn't offered, or worse, when the table feels unstable, top talent walks away. Brondello wasn't interested in inheriting a win-now team with cracks in its foundation. She wanted to build from the ground up. That means structure. It means patience. It means a front office that listens, not one that simply expects her to make magic overnight. Toronto offered her all of that. It wasn't the biggest offer, but it was the right one. Her decision immediately sent shockwaves through the league. Fans were stunned. Media scrambled. Other coaches quietly nodded in understanding, because this wasn't just about one coach making a career move. This was a top-tier talent saying no to everything the league has traditionally valued: money, speed, celebrity, in favor of alignment. And the fallout? It came fast. The New York Liberty's coach was suddenly let go. Rumors started flying about other teams rethinking their hiring strategies. Behind closed doors, conversations turned critical. The question wasn't, why did Brondello turn down Dallas? The question was, what's wrong with Dallas that made her walk away? That's not the kind of question any franchise wants to be at the center of. Especially not when they thought they were about to dominate the next era of women's basketball. The uncomfortable truth? Having Paige Bueckers wasn't enough. The Wings didn't lose Brondello because of her coaching demands. They lost her because they weren't ready to build with her. They wanted her to plug into a system that was already flawed, and she wasn't willing to do that. That's what makes this so important. This move wasn't just strategic, it was symbolic. It reframed the coaching conversation in the WNBA. It said to every franchise, if you want the best, you need to be the best behind the scenes. You need to offer more than a check and a chance at a title. You need to offer clarity, collaboration, a roadmap, and a reason to believe the project isn't going to unravel the second something goes sideways. Because Brondello has options. Every elite coach does. And now, thanks to this move, coaches everywhere know they can be just as selective. It also called into question how much weight a star player like Bueckers can carry when the rest of the house isn't in order. Paige is a future face of the league, no doubt. She brings crowds, attention, and generational skill. But what Brondello's choice revealed is that player talent doesn't always equal organizational readiness. Coaches want to shape legacies, not just babysit them. Brondello could have joined Dallas and walked into an immediate contender. But instead of quick wins, she chose long-term growth. Instead of media frenzy, she chose quiet progress. Instead of a superstar-led franchise, she chose one where she could help shape the identity from day one. It's not about rejecting Paige. It's about rejecting pressure without partnership. That distinction matters because the league is changing. The power is shifting. Coaches now expect to be part of the strategy, not just the execution. They want transparency, not transactions. Toronto understood that, and that's why they landed one of the most respected coaches in the game. Now they get to build with her, not just under her. That difference? It's going to show on the court. Meanwhile, the Wings are back at square one, with a star player, a public misstep, and a very visible rejection on their hands. And it's not just a team issue, it's a league issue. The fact that New York also struggled to fill their coaching position points to something broader. The WNBA is facing a real challenge in attracting and retaining top leadership talent. That's not about money. It's about trust, about vision, about whether teams are doing the work behind the scenes to match what they're selling in public. Brondello didn't leave over salary. She left over structure. That's a sentence every front office in the league should be writing down. Because what's clear now is this: culture is king. And no amount of cash or championship talk is going to override the fact that coaches want to belong, not just be used as the face of someone else's plan. And the fact that this decision caused multiple ripple effects, staffing shakeups, league-wide questions, reevaluations of how coaching talent is recruited, tells you everything you need to know about how rare this moment is. This is a turning point, not just for Dallas, not just for Toronto, but for how coaching in the WNBA is going to work from here on out. No more expecting coaches to jump at the biggest check. No more assuming star players are enough to seal a deal. No more building around hype instead of substance. This was Sandy Brondello saying, I know my value. I know what I need. And I'm not compromising for a short-term win. She made the tough choice. And in doing so, she reset the standard. Let us know what you think. Did Dallas fumble the biggest opportunity of the season? Was Brondello right to walk away? And how do you see this affecting the future of coaching in the WNBA? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like if you believe leadership starts from the top, share this with someone still trying to figure out how a stacked offer turned into a thanks, but no thanks, and subscribe for more deep dives into the real moves shaping the league. Because this isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about how greatness is built and who gets to decide what it looks like. Let's keep it real. Sandy Brondello's decision didn't just sting. It shattered a narrative the Dallas Wings were banking everything on. Paige Bueckers was supposed to be the linchpin, the golden ticket, the kind of franchise player that turns any struggling organization into a championship contender almost overnight. Dallas had her. They had the cap space. They had the media heat. All they needed was the right coach to lock it all together. And Brondello? She was that coach. Proven, respected, championship experience. A no-brainer. So when she said no, it didn't feel like a normal pass. It felt like the floor dropped out from under the Wings' future plans. This wasn't a scheduling conflict. This wasn't a better salary offer elsewhere. Toronto didn't outbid Dallas. They didn't outshine them on paper. What they did do was offer something that too many teams forget to value: vision, alignment, and respect for the coaching role as a partner, not a pawn. And Brondello saw that. She wasn't looking to babysit a project someone else built. She wasn't looking to slap her name on a team that was only interested in optics. She wanted a real seat at the table, a voice in the foundation. And if she didn't see that clearly laid out, no amount of talent or money was going to change her mind. That's what makes this so loud. Because now every franchise that's been trying to copy the superstar-first model just got a cold dose of reality. Star power matters. Yes, but if the organization doesn't function, no one wants to step into that mess, especially not coaches who are experienced enough to see the red flags before anyone else. Brondello's rejection of the wings was essentially a rejection of chaos. And she didn't make it quietly. By walking away from the biggest contract on the board, she sent a message: if the structure isn't right, I'm not interested. That's a line in the sand. And it just changed how business will be done across the WNBA. Dallas thought they had the perfect pitch, but that pitch wasn't enough. Because talent on its own doesn't build championships. Teams do. Systems, cultures, organizational clarity. That's the part Dallas either underestimated or assumed could be patched over with a few flashy headlines and a superstar rookie. Brondello saw right through it. She didn't just pass on a job. She passed on a philosophy. One that said, we got a star, now let's plug in someone to make it work. That's not coaching. That's crisis management in disguise. And someone with Brondello's resume, she doesn't do Band-Aids. So she walked straight into the arms of the Toronto, not the most famous team, not the richest, not the flashiest, but the smartest move for her. Because Toronto didn't try to sell her a dream. They offered her a blueprint. They didn't just talk about winning, they talked about building. That distinction? It's everything. Toronto gave her what Dallas couldn't: patience, autonomy, a future she could help shape from the ground up. And while it might not make headlines the way a Bueckers-Brondello duo would have, it's already paying off in a much more important way: credibility. Toronto is now seen as a franchise that gets it, that understands how to recruit real leadership, that sees beyond the next season. And that reputation, it spreads fast. Meanwhile, Dallas has to sit with the optics. They had the biggest contract offer, the brightest rookie, and still couldn't land their first-choice coach. That's not just a bad look, it's a damaging one. Because now, every coach in the league is watching. They're asking the same question: if Sandy walked, what did she see? That's not a question Dallas is ready to answer publicly. But internally, it better be the first thing on the agenda. Because this isn't a one-off. This is a league-wide shift. Coaches aren't desperate. They're deliberate. And they're done being treated like interchangeable pieces in someone else's machine. The myth that coaches will always follow star players wherever they go, Brondello just killed that with one decision. Paige Bueckers is elite. No one's questioning that. But the idea that her presence would automatically make the Wings a coaching destination? Not anymore. Because elite coaches aren't just looking for talent to manage. They're looking for organizations to grow with. That's what Toronto gave Brondello. And that's what Dallas failed to provide. And here's the most dramatic part. This doesn't just change one coaching storyline. It changes the entire recruitment model. From now on, teams can't just wave a check and say, we've got stars, come coach them. They have to prove that the environment is worth it, that the infrastructure is stable, that the coach is part of the planning process, not just the cleanup crew when things go south. Brondello didn't fall for a short-term fix. She chose a long-term vision. And in doing so, she exposed something the league has been slow to confront. Without real investment in organizational culture, no amount of star power is sustainable. Let's not forget, this whole thing caused actual ripples. New York's coach was fired. Other front offices began reevaluating their hiring timelines. The league's top decision-makers had to confront the fact that something deeper was broken. The delay in filling coaching roles wasn't just bad luck. It was a reflection of how these roles are being sold and how few of them are set up for success. The league can't afford to ignore that anymore. What Brondello did was bold, but it was also calculated. She didn't just take a stand. She gave a roadmap for every other coach looking to make a move. Don't settle. Ask questions. Look deeper than the press release. And if the vibes are off, walk. That walk may be quiet, but the aftershocks? They're loud. Toronto now has a coach who believes in the mission, not just the paycheck. They're building something that will outlast hype cycles and media noise. And that's how dynasties start. Not with one star, but with the right foundation. In Dallas? They're back at the drawing board. Paige Bueckers is still a generational talent. But now the pressure to make it work is tenfold. Whoever steps into that coaching role next will do so under a microscope, constantly compared to the one who said no. And maybe that's the hardest part, because Brondello's absence will be felt, not just in Dallas, but in every coaching office across the league. Her decision raised the stakes. It raised the standard, and it redefined what coaching success actually looks like. So where does that leave us? With a new reality. One where the best coaches aren't just following the money. They're following alignment. They're following vision. And they're following environments that value them beyond what they can win in a season. The aftermath of Sandy Brondello's decision is still unraveling across the league. And if you listen closely, you can hear the quiet panic behind closed doors. Dallas didn't just lose a coaching candidate. They lost the standard. They built the entire pitch around Paige Bueckers, the league's next generational centerpiece, and Brondello still walked. Not because she didn't believe in the player, but because she didn't believe in the plan. That hits different, because what this moment exposed is something teams don't like to talk about. Sometimes your biggest strength on paper becomes your biggest weakness in the room. Dallas thought Bueckers was the golden hook. And yes, in most contexts, she would be. But when your offer depends entirely on one star and doesn't come with a culture to match, it starts to look like a trap. Coaches aren't chasing quick wins anymore. They're chasing control. They want to be part of something they can shape, not something they have to fix. And what Toronto offered Brondello was exactly that. A clean slate, a front office that respected her voice, and a long runway to build, not just manage. Let's call it what it is, a strategic masterstroke. Toronto didn't offer the most cash. They didn't offer the biggest spotlight. What they offered was the least chaos. And in today's WNBA, that's worth more than anything. Because when you're talking about top-level coaching, the stakes aren't just about winning or losing anymore. They're about legacy. Brondello wasn't going to put hers on the line for a system that didn't have the scaffolding to support it. That's what makes this moment so defining. It reframes the conversation around what coaching success actually means. It's not just about X's and O's. It's about alignment, support, and most of all, vision. If a franchise doesn't have a clear one, the smartest coaches won't touch it. Period. And now, Dallas is facing the fallout. They're not just missing a coach, they're wearing the consequences of being turned down so publicly. Every interview they hold from here on out will be colored by that no. Every coach they talk to will ask, what went wrong with Sandy? What didn't she like? What am I walking into that she didn't want to deal with? That's not just uncomfortable. That's operationally devastating. Because when trust gets broken in the recruiting process, it doesn't heal quickly. The Wings had a window, and now they've got questions. Meanwhile, Toronto's gamble is already paying off. They didn't just sign a name, they changed their reputation. Suddenly, the Tempo are the franchise that gets it. They're the team that values structure over stardom. They're the team coaches will now watch more closely. Because if Brondello, one of the most respected minds in the game, chose them over a proven roster, there's something happening in that front office. That kind of credibility isn't easy to buy. It's earned, quietly, over time. And now Toronto has it. Back in Dallas, it's a different story. The pressure on Paige Bueckers just doubled, through no fault of her own. She didn't ask to be the centerpiece of this mess. But that's the burden of being the star. When the system around you fails to deliver, the spotlight doesn't dim, it intensifies. And now, whoever eventually takes the coaching job in Dallas walks into a fractured situation. High expectations, no clarity, and the shadow of what could have been looming over every move. That's not an easy fix. Because the message from Brondello's walkaway was loud. Talent doesn't guarantee trust. Dallas thought they were building a dynasty. But they forgot that dynasties are made from the ground up, not from the top down. You don't build around a star and then figure out the culture. You build the culture first. That's the part that lasts. This is the part no one wants to say out loud. The Wings thought they had enough. But they didn't have the thing that actually matters, organizational maturity. That's what Brondello was looking for. That's what she didn't find. And that's what every coach watching this unfold is going to be thinking about the next time Dallas comes knocking. And let's not downplay what it says about the league as a whole. The fact that one coach's decision caused ripple effects, staff changes, delays in hiring, public speculation, shows how fragile the current model really is. When 1-0 can shake up multiple franchises, it means a lot of teams are walking a fine line. And now, that line's been exposed. The league wants stability. It wants growth. It wants to show that it can compete, not just on the court, but in every corner of professional sports. But that growth has to start from within. Because when coaches like Brondello choose culture over cash, it sends a signal to every other decision-maker out there. You're going to have to earn this. No more assumptions. No more shortcuts. No more leaning on superstars to do the work that leadership refuses to. It's a new era, one where coaching talent has power, where fit is more important than flash, and where turning down the most obvious opportunity can be the smartest move on the board. Brondello didn't just make a choice, she set a tone. And it's one the league can't afford to ignore. What happens next for Dallas? That's the story everyone's watching. Can they bounce back? Can they fix the internal disconnect that pushed a top coach away? Or will this moment define them for the rest of the season? And for Toronto, the Brondello era begins with clarity, with intention, with a mutual understanding that real success takes time, but that it's worth it. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. Winning isn't just about who's on the floor. It's about who's in the room when the decisions are made, and whether they're building something real or just selling something shiny. Let us know where you stand. Did Sandy Brondello make the right move? Can Dallas recover from this kind of public rejection? What does this mean for future coaches weighing their options in the league? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this if you think leadership matters more than hype. Share this with someone still stuck on the idea that talent fixes everything. And make sure you're subscribed, because the drama behind the bench might just be more important than the action on the court. And this was only the beginning.